The underestimated Arsenal Admiral Vex Thornscale stood before the crystalline command deck of the Zephyrian flagship Stellar Dominance, his reptilian features twisted in what passed for amusement among his species. The holographic display before him showed a small blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. Earth, the humans called it. Such a primitive name for such a primitive species. Status report on the human military capabilities, Vex commanded, his scaled hands clasping behind his back as he addressed his intelligence officer. Commander Zira Nightwhisper materialized beside him, her ethereal form flickering with nervous energy. Admiral, our scans show they still rely heavily on what they term conventional weapons, kinetic projectiles, chemical explosives, and combustion-powered vehicles. Their most advanced fighters still use something called jet engines, a series of chittering sounds echoed through the bridge as the crew expressed their amusement. Vex's eyes glowed with predatory satisfaction. Kinetic projectiles? You mean they still throw rocks at each other? Essentially, yes, sir. Though they've refined the process somewhat. They use what they call bullets, artillery shells, and missiles, all propelled by controlled explosions rather than energy manipulation. Vex turned to face the War Council assembled on his bridge, representatives from 12 different species, each having contributed ships to the Zephyrian Empire's expansion fleet. All of them possessed energy-based weapons that could melt mountains, plasma shields that could deflect stellar radiation, and technology that made faster-than-light travel as routine as breathing. Esteemed colleagues, Vex began, his voice carrying the confident tone of a predator addressing prey. I present to you the human defense capabilities. The hologram shifted to show human military installations. Tanks rolled across training. Grounds, their cannons firing shells that seemed laughably primitive. Aircraft swept through the sky, dropping bombs that exploded in simple fireballs rather than the elegant energy cascades their own weapons produced. General Crix Ironmaw, a towering warrior from the militant Corvan species, leaned forward in his chair. Are we certain these readings are correct? Surely no spacefaring civilization could be this backward. The readings are confirmed, Zira replied. They've achieved faster-than-light communication and basic energy manipulation, but their weapons... Technology appears frozen in what they call the atomic age. They still build vehicles with wheels instead of hover systems, and their personal weapons require physical ammunition. The assembled commanders erupted in laughter. Captain Mora Voidseeker, whose species had transcended physical form centuries ago, pulsed with bright amusement. How delightfully quaint. Do they also fight with swords and shields? Actually, Zira consulted her datapad. They do maintain blade weapons for ceremonial purposes and close combat situations. This brought another wave of laughter from the council. Vex raised a scaled hand for silence. This presents us with an unprecedented opportunity. A civilization with valuable resources and strategic positioning, defended by weapons our children would consider toys. On Earth, Captain Maria Santos stood in the Pentagon Situation Room, surrounded by screens displaying the massive alien fleet that had appeared at the edge of the solar system 3 days ago. Unlike the aliens currently mocking humanity's arsenal, Maria's expression was grim but determined. Intelligence confirms 12 different ship configurations, reported Colonel James Mitchell, pointing to the tactical display. Energy signatures unlike anything we've seen. Their technology appears to be centuries ahead of ours in conventional terms. Conventional terms? Maria repeated, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Colonel, remind me why we maintained the Strategic Kinetic Reserve Program even after developing fusion weapons. Mitchell's own expression grew knowing. Because sometimes the old ways are the best ways, ma'am. And because we learned long ago that technological superiority doesn't always translate to tactical advantage. Maria nodded, turning to address the assembled military leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, we've spent the last century being ridiculed by our own scientists for maintaining obsolete weapon systems. Today, we find out if our paranoia was justified. General Patricia Stone, head of the Army's Conventional Weapons Division, stepped forward. All ground units are in position. The Abrams tanks have been retrofitted for the kinetic penetrator rounds we developed for the program. The A-10 squadrons are loaded with depleted uranium ammunition, and our artillery. Units have the new tungsten core shells. Naval assets? Maria inquired. Admiral Robert Chase responded immediately. All railgun destroyers are operational. The electromagnetic pulse cannons are standing by, and we've got submarine units positioned with torpedo systems loaded for maximum kinetic impact. Maria looked around the room at faces that showed no trace of the humor the aliens were currently enjoying. These were professionals who understood that in warfare, the best weapon wasn't always the most advanced one. Sometimes it was the one your enemy didn't expect. Back aboard the Stellar Dominance, Vex was finalizing invasion plans. Standard protocol, he announced. Energy bombardment from orbit to disable their major cities, followed by landing forces to secure strategic resources. Estimated time to complete conquest? Given their primitive defenses, calculated strategic AI unit designation 7742, approximately 6 standard hours from initial engagement to total planetary surrender. Excellent. Signal the fleet. Begin descent to engagement altitude. Today, the Zephyrian Empire adds another primitive world to its collection. The alien fleet began its majestic descent through Earth's atmosphere, their ships gleaming like fallen stars as they approached the planet's surface. Energy shields shimmered around each vessel, designed to deflect the plasma weapons and particle beams that dominated galactic warfare. On the ground, Maria Santos watched the approaching fleet through the reinforced windows of her command bunker. All units, this is command. Remember your training, let them get close, let them get confident, and then show them why humans never throw anything away. The first alien ship to enter the lower atmosphere was the scout vessel Swift Judgment, commanded by Captain Zek Rapid Strike. His mission was simple: demonstrate overwhelming technological superiority by destroying a major human military installation with a single energy pulse. Target acquired, reported his weapons officer. Human military compound designated Fort Braxton is within range. Energy signature shows primitive chemical-based defenses only. Fire when ready, Zek commanded, settling back in his command chair to watch the humans learn their place in the galactic hierarchy. The energy beam lanced down from the Swift Judgment, a brilliant blue stream that could have carved through a small moon. It struck the fort's main building, which evaporated in a spectacular explosion of superheated matter. Direct hit, the weapons officer reported. Target eliminated, no return fire detected. Zek was about to order the attack on the next target, when his tactical officer's voice cracked with confusion. Captain, I'm reading multiple projectile launches from concealed positions around the destroyed facility. Projectiles? Zek's scales shifted to a puzzled purple. What kind of projectiles? Before the officer could answer, the first artillery shell struck the Swift Judgment's lower hull. The energy shield, designed to disperse coherent energy attacks, offered no resistance whatsoever to the tungsten core penetrator, traveling at 3 times the speed of sound. The shell punched through the hull, continued through 3 decks, and detonated inside the ship's primary power coupling. The Swift Judgment didn't explode dramatically. Instead, it simply stopped working and began falling from the sky like a very expensive rock. Impossible, Zek screamed as his ship plummeted toward the Earth. Energy shields at maximum. How did they penetrate our defenses? His answer came in the form of 6 more artillery rounds that turned his ship into scrap metal before it hit the ground. Admiral Vex watched in growing horror as the tactical display showed the Swift Judgment's destruction. How? Their weapons have no energy signature. Our shields should be impenetrable to their primitive technology. Admiral, Zira's voice trembled. I'm detecting massive kinetic launches from multiple positions across the human continent. Whatever they're firing, our sensors can barely track it. Across the battlefield, human weapons that the aliens had mocked as primitive began speaking with a voice that needed no translation. M1 Abrams tanks emerged from concealed positions, their 120mm guns sending depleted uranium penetrators through alien armor that had been designed to resist energy weapons, not kinetic impacts. Captain Santos watched the tactical display as red icons representing alien ships began winking out one by one. Target their larger vessels first, she commanded, and remember, aim for the parts that look important. The aliens were learning a harsh lesson that human military theorists had understood for centuries. The most sophisticated defense is useless if it's designed to counter the wrong threat. The shocking reality, the bridge of the stellar dominance, had descended into chaos. Admiral Vex Thornscale's confident demeanor had evaporated faster than his scout ships under human artillery fire. Warning lights bathed the command center in urgent red as damage reports flooded in from across the fleet. "Report!" Vex commanded, his scales now cycling through colors that indicated extreme agitation. Commander Zyra's ethereal form flickered wildly as she processed incoming data. 17 ships lost, Admiral. The humans are using kinetic weapons that completely bypass our energy shielding. Our defensive systems aren't even registering most of their attacks until impact. How is this possible? General Crick's Iron Maw roared, his massive form hunched over the tactical display. Our shields can deflect stellar radiation. How can simple, metal projectiles penetrate them? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Nexus Mindweaver, the fleet's chief scientist, materialized beside them with an expression of dawning horror. "General, our shields work by analyzing incoming energy signatures and generating counter-frequencies. But these human projectiles—" He paused, his tentacles writhing with distress. "They have no energy signature to counter. They're just mass and velocity." On Earth's surface, the battle was unfolding exactly as human strategists had hoped. Captain Maria Santos monitored multiple engagement zones from her command center, watching as decades of obsolete weapons proved their worth against alien technology. "Ghost 6, this is Command," Maria spoke into her headset. "Status on the Northern Engagement Zone?" The voice that crackled back belonged to Major Elena Rodriguez, callsign Ghost 6, commander of the 3rd Armored Division. "Command, this is Ghost 6. The alien hover tanks are impressive to look at, but their armor is designed for energy dissipation. Our tungsten penetrators are going through them like tissue paper." Maria allowed herself a grim smile. The strategic Kinetic Reserve Program had been her brainchild, developed during her time as a junior officer when she'd studied historical battles and noticed a disturbing pattern. Every technological revolution in warfare eventually became obsolete when faced with an unexpected approach. "Falcon Squadron, report," Maria called to her air assets. "Command, this is Falcon Leader," came the voice of Colonel Sarah Maverick Chen. "The alien fighters are fast and maneuverable, but their energy weapons take time to charge and track. Our good old-fashioned cannons and missiles are overwhelming their targeting systems. They can't process multiple simultaneous kinetic threats." Back on the stellar dominance, Admiral Vex was receiving increasingly desperate reports from his subordinates. Captain Zara Swiftblade, commanding the cruiser Nebula's Edge, appeared on the main screen with smoke and sparks visible behind her. "Admiral, we need immediate tactical reassessment," Zara reported, her usually pristine uniform torn and blackened. "The human aircraft are using projectile weapons that fire faster than our computers can calculate interception courses. My ship has been struck by over 300 individual impacts in the last 10 minutes. 300? Vex's voice cracked. How are they generating that much firepower? Dr. Mindweaver consulted his readings with growing amazement. "Admiral, these humans appear to have weaponized rapid-fire kinetic systems. Their aircraft carry weapons that fire solid projectiles at rates exceeding 4,000 rounds per minute. Our defensive systems were never designed to handle that volume of physical impacts." The revelation struck the bridge crew like a cold wave. They had prepared for elegant energy duels, not being bludgeoned by what amounted to extremely sophisticated rock-throwing machines. Lieutenant Commander Kess Starwhisper, the fleet's youngest officer, looked up from her sensor station with wide eyes. "Admiral, I'm detecting something extraordinary. The humans appear to have weapon systems we never even considered." "Explain," Vex demanded. "Sir, they have vehicles that move on tracks instead of hover systems, making them harder to detect with our energy sensors. They're using chemical propellants to launch projectiles over vast distances with pinpoint accuracy. And their infantry—" She paused, checking her readings twice. "Their infantry carries individual weapons that can fire hundreds of rounds without reloading. On the ground, Staff Sergeant Mike "Tank" Williams was demonstrating exactly what Kess had detected. His unit had been tasked with eliminating alien ground forces in the Chicago urban area, and they were doing so with weapons that would have been familiar to soldiers from a century ago, albeit refined to perfection. "Contact front," Tank called, out as alien infantry units rounded a corner. The aliens moved with fluid grace, their energy weapons charging with ominous hums. Tank's response was immediate and devastating. The M249 light machine gun in his hands opened fire, sending 200 rounds of 5.56mm ammunition downrange in less than 30 seconds. The alien soldiers, equipped with personal energy shields, designed to deflect plasma bolts, discovered that their defenses were useless against high-velocity metal. "These aliens sure are pretty," Tank muttered to his squad mate as they advanced through the now silent street. But pretty doesn't stop bullets. Back in space, Admiral Vex was facing a reality that no Zephyrian commander had encountered in 3 centuries of conquest. His technologically superior fleet was being systematically destroyed by weapons that predated their civilization's discovery of energy manipulation. "Admiral," Dr. Mindweaver reported, his scientific curiosity overriding his fear, I understand what happened. The humans developed along a different technological path. While we and every other spacefaring species abandoned kinetic weapons for energy systems, they continued to refine both approaches." "Why would they do such a thing?" General Ironmaw demanded. Captain Santos could have answered that question. In her command bunker, she was reviewing reports from engagement zones across the globe, watching as human forces demonstrated the wisdom of maintaining diverse weapon systems. "Colonel Mitchell," she called to her aide, "patch me through to Admiral Vex. I believe it's time for a conversation." The transmission reached the Stellar Dominance on an open channel, allowing the entire bridge crew to hear the human commander's voice. "Admiral Vex, this is Captain Maria Santos of the Earth. Defense Forces, I believe we need to talk." Vex's scales flushed with humiliation, but he accepted the transmission. "Human commander, you have surprised us with your capabilities." "Admiral, let me explain something about human nature." Maria's voice carried a tone of patient instruction. "We're paranoid. We plan for every contingency. When we developed energy weapons, we kept the kinetic ones. When we built hover vehicles, we maintained wheeled ones. When we created advanced targeting systems, we still taught our soldiers to shoot with iron sights." "But why?" Vex found himself genuinely curious despite his defeat. "Because, Admiral, we learned long ago that the enemy you're not prepared for is the one who kills you. You prepared for energy warfare. We prepared for everything." Dr. Mindweaver leaned forward, his scientific mind fascinated. "You deliberately maintained primitive weapon systems as a strategic reserve?" "Primitive?" Maria's laugh carried no humor. "Admiral, there's nothing primitive about a weapon system that's been refined for over 1,000 years. Our simple firearms are marvels of engineering. Our obsolete artillery can place a shell within meters of a target from hundreds of kilometers away. Our backward tanks can operate in conditions that would shut down your hover systems." The bridge of the Stellar Dominance fell silent as the implications sank in. They hadn't encountered a primitive civilization. They had encountered a species that had deliberately chosen to master multiple technological approaches instead of specializing in one. "What are your terms?" Vex asked, his voice heavy with defeat. "Withdraw your fleet, Admiral. Earth is not for conquest. But if you're interested in trade, in learning from each other rather than dominating each other, we can talk." As the alien fleet began its humiliating retreat from Earth orbit, Vex found himself contemplating a disturbing thought. In 3 centuries of galactic expansion, the Zephyrian Empire had never encountered a species that had chosen diversity over specialization. Every civilization they had met followed the same technological development path, abandoning kinetic weapons for energy systems, replacing physical vehicles with hover technology, substituting AI targeting for manual skills. But the humans had kept it all. Every advancement was added to their arsenal, rather than replacing their existing capabilities. They were technological pack rats who had turned paranoia into a strategic advantage. Commander Zyra, Vex said as his flagship limped away from Earth. Send a message to the High Command. Tell them we've encountered something unprecedented. What shall I tell them, sir? Vex looked back at the blue world that had just handed the mighty Zephyrian Empire its first defeat in 3 centuries. Tell them we found a species that never throws anything away, and tell them that might be the most dangerous trait in the galaxy. On Earth, Captain Santos watched the alien fleet disappear beyond the edge of the solar system. Around her, the command staff was celebrating, but Maria's expression remained thoughtful. Colonel Mitchell, she said quietly, make sure we maintain all weapons programs. Every single one. Ma'am? Because, Colonel, if we've learned anything today, it's that you never know when old-fashioned might be exactly what you need. The lesson was clear. In a universe of energy weapons and hover technology, sometimes the most devastating response was the one nobody expected. Sometimes the best defense against the future was a really good understanding of the past. And sometimes the species that looked the most primitive was actually the most prepared.